how the Marvels kind of gotten to that place. But this movie really does, I feel like, give it all in terms of setting up stakes and making us care about these new characters, right?
Into this knowing that there's new characters, and it's like, okay, like let's see what you got, and like it totally just works. Just the time we spend with certain characters.
Yeah, I mean, I'll be honest, Jeremy, and this is maybe like the long time, how do you say it, meme, I guess, about avatars. No one remembers the characters' names, right? Jake Sully, who's heard of him, right?
Yeah,
But
but it's not about yeah, but the thing is
yeah,
that they're convincing of the emotion. We all felt that impact of emotion through Sam Worthington and Zoe Saldana, I would say in
sure,
particular.
yep,
And then those characters are back, and we still kind of remember uh, kind of what's going on behind their eyes. You know what I'm saying?
yeah.
Like,
I feel like so the nice thing about this movie is that of course it has these legacy characters that we can be like, okay, they're like kind of the set the post in the ground, and we can kind of use them to center ourselves. But they introduce so many new characters, like you mentioned, and I
yeah,
don't.
there's not really a point of entry
No.
in the typical fashion. So it's fascinating in terms of how it tells the story in that regard, like almost like more like a book with chapters and just different characters at the forefront.
Yeah, and I'm again okay with that. I was really struggling to remember. First of all, again, I don't remember the new characters' names. I could not, without referencing IMDb, tell you a single child of Natiri
Took,
and
that's an
Jake.
easy one. What do you mean? Took,
I no,
Spider?
I meant I Spider maybe, but that's adopted. So like
Spider is the only human character the entire time. He's just basically
yes.
naked,
Also,
just constantly in
bold
turmoil.
choice, right, Jeremy? To just go with like baby Tarzan as like a
Yeah,
like
yeah.
it's really I thought um bold being maybe really the only word we can use here. I feel like if this was any other movie, that character would be a complete embarrassment to the movie. And the thing is, I think Spider largely works, but I think there is moments where it's like, ugh, this is a little cringy. I don't know. Do you ever feel
Mhm.
that? Like, maybe it's the performance that wasn't top notch
Yeah,
in certain parts.
I think it was some of the look too with how the hair looked, like it just
Right, the
looked kind of fake.
dreadlocks. Yeah.
Yeah. But yeah, I just remember thinking the character was just going through so much, like just constantly being
Yeah.
tossed around and just rolling around and thrown and captured and uh yeah, just a very like I just remember thinking like I would not want to be that actor. Like it doesn't seem like he had fun filming
Well,
Avatar 2.
here's the thing. He's in the water. He's like, that's so funny because I was
In
thinking
the
the
water
same
a
thing.
lot too, yeah.
He's
He's
in the
always
water
swimming.
all the time. He's basically naked most of the time.
Yeah.
And he's got to wear
Wearing a
this
wig.
stupid wig. Yep. And then
Then he has to hiss
on,
all the time.
he has to hiss all the time. And most of the time, he's probably not even acting against anybody. He's probably just there's probably just like a maybe they brought in this like the whole motion capture suits and all that kind of stuff to interact with people in every scene. But I get the impression that there were scenes where he was just on a soundstage alone and having to like
I don't know.
pretend.
Maybe. I mean, I don't know. You never know.
It's really hard to know because this movie is so seamless in its use of its use of CG, right? But I don't. It's really hard to imagine that he always had someone to act off of. Again, I don't know. I don't want to. I don't want to kind of like pick on Spider, who is played by who, by the way. Let's find out. But I just I
There's
wasn't
a tall
completely on
order.
board. It's just very hard to sell somebody on that character fully, right?
But honestly, it like it looked pretty seamless. Just the interactions where he was
Yes.
set within the world, even though it's basically totally animated. Like it's pretty nuts. And then like my mind just races to the possibilities of like any world that you has a unique look or a different look with characters of all sizes and colors and whatnot. Like you can
Anything you
using
can
this
imagine.
technology you can make.
Yeah. So the actor was Jake Champion, which is by the way great name, great name. And yeah, again, I don't know if he crushed it necessarily from a performance standpoint. Very hard work, full the top notch to him. I think you mentioned something that's really interesting, which I really love, which is that um, there's they challenge themselves because I think it would be much easier to just be like it's all Navi, right?
Hmm.
That's easier, right? But instead they're going to also put a real human person in there, right? And I think that makes it way harder. And I love that this movie, especially in the first act, does a lot of the stuff that I really wish the first movie did more of, which was like have more scenes with humans and Navi interacting that really show the scale and the difference in size between the two
Mm.
species. And they really lean into that early on in this movie. And and it was like a lot of it, and they weren't shying away from putting a whole bunch of Navi and a whole bunch of people together in the same scenes. And I was like in love with that. I really love the
Yeah.
first act. I think it's so fun watching, watching Quaritch kind of understand his mission and go through all these things and like we're going to Pandora and like doing that whole
Yeah,
that whole
we get it
callback.
again. Like
Yeah,
here you go.
we're not in Kansas anymore. It's that's really cool, and that even that scene where he's like talking to himself with the recorded video from the first movie that's supposed to be set like basically the moment before they go out and get killed.
Hmm.
I think that's really cool. So I really just love that. And then of course this is I can't forget to mention this, and I might have if I hadn't thought of it just now. But his crew of like badass bounty hunters, right?
Yeah.
Is like taken. It's like might as well. Okay, we're gonna take the cast of Tears of the Sun, and we're gonna make them Navi, and we're gonna and they're
Yeah.
gonna be like the most badass characters you've ever seen or heard of, and they're all gonna be expendable, but they're super cool and they're bad guys. It's like
Yeah.
okay, awesome. I was
And
totally on board with
the
that.
threat level is just through the roof throughout
Yes,
that. Through like knowing that there's this team that's best of both worlds, that's like caught up to speed, uh, and is now on even playing field, but maybe has the edge. It's like
yeah.
wow, that's pretty cool. Like
Their use of like army like lingo basically is also top notch. There's one scene that's basically like just a full minute of army, like I don't even know how to describe it other than like a what's the word I'm looking for here, jargon, right, where it's like on actual blah 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 niner something something, and I was like eating it up. You know, Jeremy, one of my favorite things, of course, is always someone yelling something and someone yelling that same thing but louder. There's a little bit of that and a little bit of like that army lingo thing that like really
when there
makes
was
it
the
feel
pilot,
cool. Yeah.
they kept showing the pilot with the aviators and he's wearing a ball
Yes.
cap. Like
Yes.
can't see it. He's like covering total vision, but he's steering this huge ship.
Yeah.
And then they
It's
cut to
so
him once.
cool.
It's like that's kind of a cheesy, typical like shot in
Sure.
of a military vehicle. Then they go back to him like multiple times, and then we actually like, see him get killed.
I love that they don't like shy away from showing the kills either. I mean, again, there's a lot of like reused kills, like the arrows, the giant arrows through the chest. Those ones are usually
Right.
pretty brutal, right? That like ultimately, first of all, the first, even just the opening action sequence, which is that train sequence,
Da-na-na-na.
right,
Right.
is so cool. I was like, when I saw that train start to explode, I turned to Kara and I was like, "This is the best movie I've ever seen." Because I was like, it was
Yeah,
so
like we've seen
over the
things
top.
like that
Yeah,
before, but that was done on another level, like seamless and quick. It's like here you go, here's your first taste of
right.
what's to come.
Um,
And then I love the like the whole space people or whatever, and then like they look up and you see the star, and then
yes,
it like cuts like this like James Cameron's version of Star Wars with the slow pan of like these crazy ships,
yes,
and
Jeremy. I'm
that
so glad
music
you
it was
mentioned
like da na 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 like this ominous
this. Yes,
like holy
the
cow.
Sky People have returned.
Yeah, Sky People, sorry, yeah.
Yeah, and I just love it so much
Did
because
you think of Star Wars at all in some of that imagery
well,
at all?
no,
Because
not
I was
really,
no.
because for me, we'd already seen kind of that what those ships look like in the first movie, and I was like, kind of
Mm.
just like, what are they gonna do different? These are bigger, I guess, so that kind of
Yeah, I
felt
just
like
love
that.
the framing and the scope and the speed of it and the size,
I loved
and just the look of it.
I loved seeing the reflection of Pandora in like the
Yes,
mirror
yeah.
thing that they have on their ships. That was really cool.
Hmm.
Um,
And they just seem so disadvantaged, like
yes,
with what's coming at them and how they can just kind of survey them, plan methodically. but then like then you have these moments with Jake Sully. He's using technology. He's using automatic
Mm-hmm.
machine guns. They're using the animals that exist there and flying around like
Right.
banshees.
The
Like it's
banshees. Yeah.
that whole part of it is was
Oh,
super thrilling and
when
exciting
he's on the
and kind
banshee and
of
he's
not
we
really talked about as much.
we see I mean we see a little bit in the first movie, but when he's on the banshee and they've got like all the communication gear and he's got like the AR and
Yeah,
like he
I
just
was
looks
like,
it's
what
so cool
is
looking.
man? I had a moment where I was like, what is this? Like this is a really cool concept. This avatar, it's not just like it could be anything. Like they could look like anything. Like
Right.
these avatars are slowly starting to change as well, right? From as we can tell from the children and the hybrids and whatnot.
Mm-hmm.
Um, so it's just so cool seeing like this typically indigenous being um, performing these wild
Like
tactics with
yeah,
with technology.
yes. Well, and that's I think that's like where you get really get it with the like I said with Corch's like badass crew. But
Hmm.
um I think you bring up another good point here. A couple things I want to touch on. One of them being how awesome the human technology is and how like thought out and like efficient it all is,
Hmm.
right?
Those
For
little
like future
crab
tech.
robots,
Right. The crab robot, like everything.
submarine
Yeah, the
things.
submarine, they're like both submarines, they have
All
like
has
jets but also
the
legs.
yellow look to it, right? Just to kind of throw it back to the aliens
Yes.
kind of robot
Well,
uh,
the use of the
skeleton suit where
mechs,
it started.
like every like all like just everything to me has this like very thoughtful but like industrial design. And of course, what we know about James Cameron is that he hates people and he wants the planet Earth to survive despite our best attempts at murdering it. So what do we learn in this movie? Oh, which we didn't really talk about in the first movie, but was implied, which is that planet Earth is dying, and we're coming to Pandora as our like next place to live. And so what does that mean? It means sending these giant ships down that are burn a massive crater, which is I thought like what a this is what I love about it. It's like genius, but it's like evil genius. You know what I mean? Where it's like that's such a smart
Hmm.
decision. If you were going to land a giant ship and you needed to build a city and like burn everything away, no better way to do it than using the like brakes basically to make your own landing zone, right?
And then have a bunch of dozers to just
Yeah, it's always the dozers.
flatten everything out.
Yeah, I love it. But what I love is that they cut to 1 year. Was it 1 year later that they cut to after the landing?
Oh yeah, something like that.
And it's like they've already have a whole city built.
Hmm.
And I think about Jeremy, what you mentioned before. Like it's like okay, so you've got these very strong and emotionally strong beings in the Navi, but technologically they're not advanced, right? But biologically they are. But it's really hard, as we see. Turns out once they start turning machine guns against Navi, they're very vulnerable, right? Um, so what do you do about that? Okay, you can use their technology against them to some degree, okay, but like the concept of planet Earth saying no, 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 we're not here just for the mines now. We're here to colonize this planet. It's kind of like an impossible task. Like, the very end of this movie, Jake like looks to the camera and says like we have to fight, right? And it's like, well, what the fuck does that even mean? Like, is it like insurgency that you're basically have to wage against the humans in some way? Like, how do you prevent a species, the humans, who can come from space, which you can't get to on your own, right? How do you prevent them from coming and bringing more and more people and more tech that you can't compete with, um, to protect your home? Like what is the actual answer? I mean, it has to be a symbiosis, right? It has to be a partnership with humanity because like they are essentially unstoppable. It's kind of like it's a challenge for James Cameron to going forward here, which is why I guess he decided, well, I got to write 5 movies because there's really like how else do you tell a story that big? But man, like how do you in this case the stakes are very small. It's Miles Quaritch and his team being brought back to life for revenge, essentially,
And then
right?
we just see that play out.
That's essentially all we see, right?
That
They don't
that's kind
even
of like
bring the
how I
full might
felt
of the humans.
towards the end. It was like what even like happened that was like super substantial? Like obviously crazy things happened, but like where the characters were and where they ended up and like what's next. It just felt like
What?
it
Yeah.
felt very middle of a franchise. Uh, became evident, but I didn't feel that necessarily while it was playing out.
Well, it was. Yeah. I mean, the movie's so good at like setting up characters and like giving you these kind of payoff moments that you kind of get these little endorphin hits throughout the whole movie, and it totally works. But you're right. I mean, the what this movie really does in a sense is establishes the new starting line, right? We had the first movie and it kind of set up the world and established kind of the concepts, right? This movie took those concepts and basically established um, a new baseline, which is that humanity's coming to colonize Pandora with all their might, everything that they can
Hmm.
bring, and Jake has to fight, right? Which like was kind of already the case. Like I don't know
Yeah.
what it was kind of frustrating watching him being like, "No, we have to run away and hide," right? And it's like, really, you have to run away and hide? Like you think that's the only option for you, and you're gonna go like what 100 miles away? That's as far as you could go. you know, there's a whole moon. So like in my opinion, um, there is some flaws. This movie is not perfect, but it's pretty close in my opinion. This is. I want to start off by saying this is a whole ass movie. It's got all the things, everything in it.
Yeah,
Um,
it's astoundingly entertaining. It is. This is what it's all about. Like the spectacle, the epicness, the scope. It's just a visual feast that's
right.
consistent, that more consistent than anything we've seen before, and is more in depth. Has new angles to it, new viewing points to it, and it just nails it in all these different areas. That it's just unbelievable, really. But once again, an Avatar movie has all these different layers that we can critique, and,
Yes.
and, and certain layers, aren't as prestigious or as great as what we revere to. But like again, as this package, what they're trying to go for in the experience of itself, it's just so entertaining.
I remember reading somewhere. I don't know if this was on Twitter or was like an excerpt from a article or something. Basically, but basically that James Cameron is like immune to cringe. Right? It's like some of the things in this movie are pretty cringy. Right? Like some of the dialogue choices and some of the kind of the family drama stuff. It's like it's really sappy. But I kind of, if you look at his movies, they're all kind of a little sappy. They kind of all have a little bit of that. So this movie really turns that up. I find, especially with like this like two family dynamic. Okay, so we get the first act. We talked a lot about that. Second act, they go to move in with the Jeremy. Who are the people they go to move in with? Please
Sea
help me.
people,
The sea people. They have a name. I don't know what they are called.
you cannot bring your war here.
You do not know the sea. Um, they're really cool. They're kind of like styled after like the kind of like Pacific Islander types of Earth, right? Like
Or
the Maui.
Aquamanish.
Yeah, the Aquaman's. I mean, that's all. They're all kind of coming from that same, the
Yeah,
Aboriginal
different tail
Australians and
sizes
New
and,
Zealand.
and,
Yeah,
and muscularity, their arms, different shape. They're just, you know, things to blend into into their environment that
slightly different
they
colored
can
blue, so
survive.
that yeah,
Yeah.
so they can it's like blend in with the water and
And then
stuff.
the sense of
Yeah.
like holding your breath, man, so many times in this movie, it's like you feel it. You have a ticking
Oh,
clock about it
it's
almost.
because they
You see
Jeremy.
the disadvantage from the Navi, and it's like it's just wrenching just seeing it kind of play out because and then especially when the Loak's being bullied with those
Oh my
younger
God, those
boys.
little shits, man! I tell you what,
Man,
left them out to
and
die.
yeah, and it's and like Cameron knows to like the expression on everyone's faces like when these moments are happening. They're so quick,
Hmm.
but so like pitch perfect and like in that
Well, they feel real,
explanation
right?
method. Essentially, it's like quick. It's like a I don't know. I think
It's
it's
shorthand,
very
right?
yeah sure yeah exactly
He's basically saying you've all been there. You've either
yeah.
bullied someone or been bullied by someone like this, and now hey, you know what this is like. We don't have to delve into the nuances of this, and then you're right into an action scene. And by the way, what they do with that holding your breath dynamic is what they just put in a little heartbeat
Hmm.
in the background of the soundscape. It's like bum bum bump, bump, and it gets a little bit faster as they start running out of breath. Bump,
There
bump,
was like a
bump, bump.
blurry 3D effect too, and when I think when
Yeah,
Quaritch came to life in the Avatar, that was pretty jarring. That I thought was kind of cool because it was obviously a POV of what he was seeing
yeah,
and giving us that same sense of you know just confusion.
yeah. I really, I think every action set piece here really works. I think the movie falls down a little bit in the middle. I mean, it really drags in the middle in the sense that like this is where I really felt the length of it, because in the middle of the movie in Act 2, it's really just a hangout movie. We're just hanging out with the Na'vi and under the sea people, who are also Na'vi, I guess technically. I don't remember the names of their tribes. I'm sorry. Um, but we have Jake and his family with the sea people, right? And by the way, is the Sea Queen, is that played by Kate Winslet? That's Kate Winslet, right?
Yeah.
Okay, just checking. So Ronal, but it says Ronal. I just wish there was pictures of the characters next to the next to them, so
You
I
got to
could
make
know
your
for
own
sure.
notes and do that.
Yeah, I guess. Um, so I I liked the whole dynamic of like the families trying to get to know each other and getting used to each other. And by the way, the little montage of them like learning to ride those sea beasts were really fun. And like
Oh yeah.
that's when I was really like blown away by how good the CG was. Where I'm like, this looks real. I don't know how else to describe it than that. And other than at some point, um, video games will look that good, and that I was like, that was what kind of was really blowing my mind. Um,
Right.
so we're not there yet, but holy crap, it's just really impressive to like the little subtle things that they do with like the transitions from underwater to above water. Um, I don't like, again, it's unclear to me what's real and what's not. And that's, I guess, movie magic. It could all most of it could be real and they just put in the
Yeah.
Navi and then that's impressive. But if it's all CG and it looks real, that's also impressive. It's like there's like it really doesn't matter how you slice it. It's very impressive. So,
Hmm.
but I just feel like that middle section is just very. If you're not really into that like interpersonal family dynamic stuff, you're probably going to be bored in that middle section of the movie. That's mostly my opinion on that. Despite the fact that there's that cool shark sequence in the middle, basically.
Yeah, I think it's par for the course when they've written so many scripts ahead of time, and then they need to set up new characters, but we need to have lived with those characters a little bit before we can kind of sign on onto them.
Mm-hmm.
And I think they do a pretty good job with like the main young one. I think Loak.
Mm-hmm.
I think he's pretty good. Uh,
Britain Dalton is the actor's name
yeah.
for Loak. Loak.
Yeah, yeah. And I was a big fan of his performance, what he was doing.
I just you get that kind of young Avengers feel. Where I was like, I did feel a little bit like I see I see what you're doing here, which is like investing us in these characters that we're gonna have to grow up with now. We're gonna have to grow into.
Yeah, I mean
Eventually Loak is
they've
gonna
shot the
be.
third
Yeah.
movie and the opening scene of the fourth movie.
Oh, really? They shot really? I thought the
Yeah.
fourth movie wasn't guaranteed until this movie was coming out.
Well, they just shot like a scene because I guess maybe it pertains to something in the third or something like that. But
Interesting.
yeah, then Cameron mentions that like he got like a couple pages of notes for this movie when he turned in the script to the studio. Then the third movie was like just one page, and then the fourth movie
Of
they
like
just
notes
said
from the
like
studio.
holy they no notes, they just said holy shit or something like that.
No notes. Holy shit. How
Yeah.
much can I?
And then
How
he
much money do
like
you need?
then he alludes to some sort of like they go to Earth, like some sort of war will happen there.
That
Um,
would be wild. I was thinking about that. Like, what's the logical conclusion? That was kind of what I was pointing at before. It's like, where does this possibly go? So anyway,
yeah.
let's take a little diversion here, kind of like the movie did. Let's talk about the box office. So we have the opening weekend box office coming in at 441 million worldwide, only 134 million domestic, which is of course North America, um, and 307 million international. Below expectations, I think, largely speaking. Are you concerned, Jeremy? from a box office perspective.
Uh, Not really. I mean, worldwide, that's pretty impressive. Like almost 500 million. I
Yeah,
mean,
opening
there's
weekend.
probably not really much competition. Like I said before, the word of mouth, I think, will get people to buy tickets.
I've already been personally
Yeah,
telling people to
like
go see this movie. Like, you have to go
100%.
see
Like
it.
just the word of mouth will spread. Okay, I got to see this. And then if there's nothing else being released that's available, you're gonna go see it. It's
Hmm.
just tough with the 3 hours too.
Yeah, that's
It
true.
is a bit of a commitment because like I wanted to see it right away again, but it's like, man, where can I get another 3 hours where I
It's a
put
half a
everything else on
day.
hold?
You're gonna spend half a day in the
Yeah.
theater. That's funny.
So
It's just really
it's
hard. Yeah.
yeah,
Yeah, I get. I mean, I do get that long problem. I don't think James Cameron cares. I mean, like you said before, like, oh, if you have to go to the bathroom during the movie, you'll just see it again,
right.
right? So I don't think he really cares about that, which
Speaking
is
of that, I'm gonna go to the
impressive.
bathroom right now.
Yeah. Okay. Well, that is fair because this podcast is typically as long as a James Cameron film, so understandable. While Jeremy's in the bathroom, I'll do a couple things. I'm going to talk about my experience in the theater, which we talked a little bit about at the beginning, but I didn't get a chance to talk about. And Jeremy's going to be blown away when he hears this. The fact that the projector cut out 3/4 of the way through this movie, right before the final action sequence, basically. And it was out for a long time. So there's basically a brownout. And I guess, or so what it said that the power went out for just a moment and it turned off their projectors. So they needed to reset them. So at some point, so the screen goes black, but the audio continues, right? So I'm just kind of listening to the movie and I'm trying to like, first of all, I'm shocked that the picture goes out. So that's the first thing. But then I'm like, okay, I'm just gonna make the most of it. I'm sure it'll come back on right away. So I'm like listening to the movie and like imagining what is going on, kind of like an audiobook. It didn't really work. And then people start freaking out. There's like, it's super dark in there. Like there's not a single light on. People start turning their flashlights on. There's murmur. The murmurs get louder. People start leaving the theater. Um, and then I gotta commend Cineplex for this because I was just on my flight from Raleigh, leaving from where was I? I'm flying back from Minnesota, from Minneapolis back to Winnipeg, connecting flight. We were sitting on the runway, like on the tarmac, for probably an hour and a half, and there's nothing more frustrating than being on a plane that's always way too hot, when no one's telling you what's going on, right? Like, why are we sitting here for so long, right? But again, props to Cineplex because the person comes in not very long after, and the lights go on, and this person comes up and said, "Listen, the power went out. We just need to reset the projector. It'll just take a couple minutes. We'll get that up and running, and you'll be right back into the show." Right. So everyone's like, "Okay, not a problem." So again, commend them for giving giving us the heads up, and then everyone goes to the bathroom. Every single person in the theater uses the opportunity to leave and go to the bathroom. Which, to be honest, a rare intermission in an Avatar movie. Jeremy. I've been talking about this for. I don't know if you're back yet, but I've been talking about this for a while. More movies need to have intermissions. I've been to long ass plays and they always have intermissions, so you can go buy some more snacks, buy their dumb merch, and then come back for the big finale. And it's usually the second half is usually not as long as the first half. I was knocked out of the Avatar world 3/4 of the way through this movie, which turns out 2 hours, just over 2 hours in, and used that opportunity to go to the bathroom. Didn't buy any more popcorn or merch. I was already satisfied on that front. But I actually kind of enjoyed the intermission. I'm telling you, I don't. This is probably bad. Theater owners don't want to hear this. They don't want more. They don't want these. They don't want it to be longer. Of course, maybe you can convince them by saying they could sell more popcorn, which I think you could certainly do. But like, really enjoyed that, despite the fact that it was inconvenient, I suppose, but really wasn't the end of the world. They brought the movie back on a little bit earlier than where we left off, so we can kind of catch back up, get back into the zone, and then pick back up. And we basically picked right up into the final action sequence. Couple funny things that happened during this intermission thing. It was super funny to me. One of them being someone in the theater, I don't know who, someone not far from me basically said, "This movie slaps." I was gonna wait to the end, but I want to say it right now. This movie slaps, which is accurate. And then also the two people next to me, like on my immediate left in the theater, another couple, I can't. We talk about, oh, this movie puts you on the edge of your seat. You're gonna be on the edge of your seat. These people were literally sitting on the edge of their seat. And maybe because people, Jeremy, like you said before, people were hitting their back of their seat, but they were leaned forward for the final like hour and a half of this movie, basically. And I gotta say, I've never really seen that before. The crowd reactions to this movie were very, very good. It was a blast seeing this on opening weekend. I think we're going to see packed theaters for a while. Of course, you've got next week, no real competition, so get back out there, see it again. I'm probably going to go see it again. Yeah, can't express that enough about this movie. It needs to be seen in theaters. It needs to be seen in theaters with as many people as possible, and ideally, I suppose, with a reclining, comforter also. Okay. I'll also mention a couple other things I saw in this James Cameron Challenging the Deep exhibit. One of the things being they had like a little model of the sunken version of the Titanic, which is fine. That was cool. But what was way cooler was seeing the script, the Titanic script, one of only a handful in the world that had James Cameron's personal notes written on it. That was really cool. And also his sketches of like Kate Winslet and Leo. I guess he's also a great artist because he's good at everything, apparently. So he had like his own hand-drawn sketches under glass that you could look at. That was really awesome, as well as other props from the movie, including the actual heart of the sea or whatever it's called, which actually looks pretty cheap. You could see it up close and in for real, but I guess that's always how it goes with movie stuff. The other thing that was super impressive was there's these little videos about his deep sea exploration, one of them being about the Titanic, and how apparently he has spent more time with the Titanic underwater than people on the boat who lived on it for real, because it only did that half voyage, so it sunk before it could get even done its maiden voyage. But so it's not very long, and but whatever. Either way, it's still impressive to think that this guy spent more time with this boat underwater than the people who actually rode the ship itself. So that's pretty cool. And I guess it's another good example of the absolutely insane attention to detail, which is that he had explored the ship with these like little submersible cameras, basically, that they could remotely control from the surface, and they could fit through windows and stuff in the boat. But they had basically recreated the ship, Titanic, as closely as they could based on these deep sea explorations. And it's like they did some side-by-side comparisons of like what the actual under the water, like some of the, I guess they also used people's memory of the boat and people's journals and images and all that kind of stuff as well. But when they got into like certain rooms they'd never been in before, and they're like, well, we designed it after this guy's sketches and this guy's photographs in his kind of his journal, and it was like almost one for one what they built, even though it was completely underwater. It was really wild. So anyway, lots of really cool stuff. If you're in Raleigh, the Raleigh area, I highly recommend it. There's also a little like 3D movie you can see. I didn't get to see that, but would highly recommend that full experience. Okay, J-Rock, you back, or am I talking to myself still? No, talking to myself still. Okay. Well, then I'm going to keep talking about... Okay. I was going to say that. I was like, I'm running out of things to talk about for myself. You'll have to go back and, Jeremy, listen to the episode, because I told a really funny story about how my theater, when I was watching this movie, the projector cut out 3/4 of the way through. But I'm not going to repeat it now, because I just told the whole story. It was actually pretty good. It was like an intermission where I got to go to the bathroom. Everyone went to the bathroom. You got to get comfy. One guy said this movie slaps super loud in the middle of it, which was funny. It was great. So anyway, you have to listen to the episode just like everyone else to get that. Okay, let's talk about the third act and one of the coolest things that I think this movie does, which is the whales, Jeremy. There's
Hmm.
whales in this movie, and what do we know about our deep sea brethren, the dolphins and the whales and the orcas and all that kind of stuff? We know that they're super smart. So they're like, well, what if these avatar whales were like super super smart? Like they're actually like, you know, fully intelligent beings that just happen to be shaped like whales. Which I thought, first of all, just the concept alone is brilliant. It's like one of those things that's like it's so obvious. Why didn't someone think about it before, right? Um, and like the way that they kind of set up. I gotta say, I thought the setup for like explaining how the whales interact with the Na'vi and like are a part of their family, not that clear. Personally, I thought could have been it was a little clunky, especially because it's set up through this whole like um, concept of this outcast, which is confusing in itself. But I loved the concept of the whales. I thought they were super cool. What did you think of the whales?
Yeah, I thought that was cool and unexpected too. Um, and like we spent a lot of time with Lawak and the whale and like
Mm-hmm.
really showcasing like what that relationship could be, even though everyone's telling them it's not what it seems
It's
to be.
forbidden or something.
Yeah.
It's unclear. So,
Well, there's some sort of war
yeah,
with the whales or something like that, right?
or
Like,
the whales fought each other. It's again, it's not clear to me. I thought they did do a great job. The explanation that like the chief water guy gives about like how he was outcast because he killed somebody or something was also not very clear. It was just like killing is forbidden and he killed somebody, therefore he is outcast and there's nothing we can do. And I'm like, oh my god, that's the best you guys could do. All right. But and like I don't even feel like the other thing is I don't even feel like you needed to have this concept of the outcast whale concept. Like it doesn't, I feel like it doesn't really add much to the movie, but I guess it does well. It fits well with Lawak's kind of like his own feeling of being kind of different and outcast himself. So I guess that works there. But anyway, I don't know. That's a kind of again a nitpick, but I love the sense of scale. Like when they're riding the whales, it's like you really get a sense of like, holy shit, these things are so big. It's so cool.
hmm
Um, and then they bring in the concept of whalers, which is even more fucking genius because if you're gonna bring in whales, what's the most evil thing that you can do and make people hate it fast, right? Okay, well we don't like forestry and we don't like miners, so that's easy. Well, that's the first one. Well, what about what's that same concept for water? It's whaling, right? We're gonna hunt these beautiful creatures um, with really cool technology, and for what, Jeremy? What are they trying to get from the whales?
some sort of brain juice.
The fountain of youth, apparently. Right? They had another unobtainium. They're like, well, we already had unobtainium. Turns out we can get that. We're good now. It's obtainium now. What's the next thing? We're gonna get this vial of gold liquid that I think again they have another, just like the first movie where it was like this little rock sells for 10 million an ounce or whatever, and then they're like this little vial of juice sells for 100 million an ounce or whatever, and I'm like, okay, it doesn't really matter. I have no context of what human money is worth at this time in the future. It means nothing to me. All that matters is that you've established that these whales have the cure for life in their brains, and that's enough to hunt them, and that makes it worth it. But again, like the little like the hover boat. How okay? What did you think of their hover boat thing? It's so cool.
Very cool.
I don't know.
I love the shot of it in the trailer when it like opens up, or even the shots of it just like coming around the corner in the
Oh, I was
distance.
gonna
You
say,
just see
Jeremy,
the scope.
the coming around the corner thing was the best part. When they're like, they look up and it's like, you're
Yeah.
like, oh shit, this is about to go down. Yeah, I don't know. Is there any? I feel like we could talk about the third act basically in two pieces, right? The whales, which we've already talked about, and then of course the great moment where the whale comes and wrecks the ship, which is awesome, right?
hmm
But then also the badass kills, and we talked about these at the very beginning. the harpoon guy, the Australian harpoon guy, paper thin character, but but um, very easy to kill, right? And fun to watch die, right? When his arm gets ripped off, that's really fun.
Yeah, it
There's
was
just a
definitely
lot
a
of cool things.
throwback to a very satisfying villain death.
Yes, right. You can't just
Just a
have bad guys just die. Like in let's say what's a good example of a lame bad guy death? Oh, Mission Impossible 3, where he gets hit by a car, and then his shoe falls off. I hate that ending, Jeremy. I will die on that hill. That I love. People love Mission Impossible 3, but that ending sucks. Um, but no, James Cameron knows like how to make a satisfying villain death. I mean, Aliens, Terminator, the list goes on. But like, you're totally right. It's just fun to watch bad people get killed in like crazy, you know, not just crazy ways, but like ways that really feel like ironic or like feel like it's like they're getting their comeuppance. Like here's a little taste of your own medicine type of thing.
Mhm.
Um, So that's basically the third act, which of course ends with the kids getting kidnapped like 3 times, and then almost drowning. One of them gets shot and dies. What did you think of that moment?
Um, well, I was just, you're kind of just waiting for it, right? There's just so many close scenarios, bullets flying. You have all these children. At first I thought maybe Natiri would be the one to go.
Mm-hmm.
Obviously very unfortunate. The older brother who's trying to guide the younger one as best he can, gets that stray bullet, but I don't even know if there's really a lesson learned there from Lawak. It's because like
Right.
he
It's like,
was
oh man, it
his
sucks.
heart. Well, his heart was in the
Right.
right place. They were doing the right thing by like kind of going against those orders, which typically they were doing, and it
They
was like a
literally, Jeremy,
lesson.
they literally went against their orders every single time. They had them, right? I
Yeah,
mean,
but then the last time the stakes were just there to where like it made sense they had to do it or else like their sisters would
right.
die or something, right? So it kind of made the death of the older brother not as impactful, I guess. But I mean, I felt pretty impactful from it. Just knowing the connection with
Totally.
his siblings and just the protection that Natiri exudes. Like even like her in the final act when she's just the most badass
Oh my God. She's so cool.
Navi of all time, essentially,
That,
with a bow,
do you see
is
that
just
like
incredible.
cartwheel thing that she does where she does this cartwheel like on the ship and like throws this guy off the ship and like shoots a bow at the same time. It's like the
Yeah, it's
coolest
like
thing.
it's like Predator mixed with Hawkeye in these
Yeah,
moments.
basically. Yet such a good point. The Predator reference is good. I feel like there's not enough like I think it's
Yeah, just a
yeah,
10-foot tall being.
with sharp objects.
Yeah,
Yeah. Um she is, I mean, I like her I feel like she kind of gets a back seat in this movie, and I think that's a little unfortunate
for
because
sure. Yeah,
it
she's
starts
a protective mother,
yeah.
right? She's pregnant a lot of the time.
Well, she's pregnant for like a scene, and then she has the next kid, and then she's not
Right, right,
pregnant for
right.
most of the rest of the movie. But like, I just feel like she's kind of just like the nagging wife. It's like, oh, you're making a mistake, Jake. We shouldn't leave our family. We shouldn't leave our home. That's not a good idea. But we have to stand and fight. And he's like, no, it's not. I have to make this right decision. And then of course, she's right the whole fucking time, right? And then she's like, and then of course, what happens? They don't listen to her, and her oldest son is murdered by their greatest enemy. So, there's a little bit of like, is there going to be some resentment because there already was. This is a classic trope in and of itself, but I actually appreciate it when it's done right, which is when you have like these 3 or in this case there's 5 kids, but like this layer of like the middle child kind of being the problem child, right? And kind of in this case potentially taking the blame for the death of his older brother. So Jake, who already had like a bit of an axe to grind with what's his name again? What's the name of the guy? The younger brother, Lawak. Is that it?
Lawak, yeah.
Yeah. So he already has an axe to grind with Lawak, and now as they grow older, that could fester and turn into like this real like resentment that could be there. Like, you're not your brother. It's your fault he's dead. That kind of thing. That could be really interesting. We'll see if that kind of plays out that way. It kind of like, I think it's a really bold move because, of course, you already have this family dynamic, right? But then you have the concept of the adopted kids, and then what could like shake this up more? Killing one of the kids is like changes the family dynamic forever, right? It's like a moment in time that we see that, of course, in the line is, of course, we always want to see the most interesting moments in any character's life in a movie. That's the whole point. We see this moment that like will change their lives forever. There's no coming back from the death of your sibling or your kids, right? It's never gonna be like it was. So I find that really fascinating. We don't really get to explore that much in this movie, but we maybe will in the future movies. We haven't talked at all about Sigourney Weaver's character.
Well, I mean, there's not too much to chew on there. It's cool seeing that character. I guess I don't know. I mean, there's just not enough, right? There's obviously some new stuff going on with her connection, which is pretty intriguing.
So here's what Kara said to me when we sat down in the car driving home. She's like, "So is Kiri just Jesus?" I was like, wait a minute, hold on, let me think about that. Yeah, I guess so, because she's born of a Virgin Mary, right? She's born of this immaculate conception, right? And furthermore, she can speak to God, right?
I can feel her.
Right? Her voice, it's mighty, right? Or her heartbeat, I guess. So she's the daughter of the god that is Pandora, somehow. So I think that in and of itself, interesting concept, kind of seen it done a lot, but whatever. The Bible, little rote at this point. But I did like how it was shown and visualized, right? These moments where she's kind of like basically having visions, right? And she's literally talking with her mom, while connected to the world tree, basically, right? The underwater world tree. And the way that like the scientists kind of like talk about it, right? Which we get the cameos from Avatar 1 with the scientist there, and talking about how she's kind of got like she's clearly has some sort of mental disorder or some issue and they don't know how to understand it, but we can perceive it as that clearly she has a connection to Awa as like an actual like direct line. So I think that is like really interesting, and like how does that play out will become, I guess, more interesting as she grows up. I think the whole like angsty teenager thing works, I guess. It's weird that it's played like that she's voiced by Sigourney Weaver. I find the voice a little odd, to be honest, because I know what Sigourney Weaver sounds like and it doesn't sound like that. So I don't know. Did you notice that voice thing at all?
I mean, just to make it sound younger, basically, but I still could sense Sigourney Weaver's like
Yeah, a little
presence
bit.
and like cadence.
Yeah.
Just a younger, somber.
I think it's a challenge when you know what someone already sounds like. If it was like an actress I'd never really heard of or didn't know as well as Sigourney Weaver, I would be like, it would be a nothing burger, right? Of course, it would just sound like that's what Kiri sounds like. But because I know it's Sigourney Weaver that's voicing her, it kind of adds a little bit of uncanny valleyness to it. And there's not a lot of uncanny valley in this movie, right? Concept being that something that feels a little off. That's just one of those things, because the rest of it is I think totally fine. Are there any other concepts? I feel like there's so many concepts that we haven't touched on. I love that Jermaine Clement makes an appearance in this movie as Dr. Garvin, as a kind of this reluctant guy who's kind of like, oh, I know about the ocean creatures, but I guess I have to hunt them, which of course we saw in the first movie also, so that's fine. But I love Jermaine Clement. Really cool to see him here doing an American accent, which I've never seen him do before either, right? I'm just used to his New Zealand Kiwi accent, but I thought that was really awesome. Anything else that like you thought was really cool or stood out to you?
I don't know. I mean, I think we touched on a lot of stuff. I'm
It's
not too
we've
sure.
covered probably
Everything was
yeah.
absolutely cool. But
Yeah, yeah, I don't know. I mean, like I said, I thought the tech was cool. I thought that finale was really fun. I think it's another thing which I guess we could talk about, which is we talked a little bit of like where does this movie go and all that kind of stuff. But I really don't know like what this movie sets up. But we know that okay, so the kids are going to grow up, and we know that they're staying in the water world. I think one of the things that's interesting, of course, is that it took James Cameron one full movie before he could get to his doing his water world thing, and that's awesome because it's really good. Um, Jake says they're going to stay there and they're going to live there and they're going to stay in the water world. We'll see if that turns out to be true. Hard to imagine that James Cameron is going to just do more of the same. It's not really his style. But he does love the water, so it's a little bit of a 50-50 there. But I find it interesting that they would like lean into the water stuff because it really does feel like the natural equalizer, right? Like this, they've got all this technology and they've got all this stuff that really makes it an uneven playing ground with the humans having all this extra technology. But then when you bring in the water element, I really feel like it evens things out, right? Humans are not designed to be underwater. We have to use all this extra technology, like these submarines and all these other things, to make it work. And I think it's pretty clear that it kind of gives the Na'vi a little bit of an edge, or at least balances a little bit more. So I think that's cool. But I just don't know where this goes. So what does the next movie look like to you, Jeremy? What's the main crux of the next one?
I don't know. I have no idea. I just think it's crazy that so many people are still alive. Uh,
You thought more people would die in this movie?
yeah, like I mean, we're like Quaritch was basically dead, and he's back, and that is going to continue in a different
Well,
capacity.
that's what I mean. I feel like I asked that before, but like, how do you continue to use Quaritch without him being like a complete like become a joke of a character, right? Because you know, I guess you've got this father son dynamic, which is I thought was kind of I don't know. Well, I guess we'll kind of offshoot there. You have this moment where he has the kids by knife point, right? And then Natiri uses Spider to threaten him, and it works. So we know there's some sort of like he's got a soft spot for his kid, right? But it's wild that movie, the first movie, by the way, did not set up a concept of anyone having kids at all. That was not a concept at all. And then they were just introduced it, and they're like, okay, I guess he had kids. All right, fine. I'm willing to buy into that. But did you just like buy in hook, line, and sinker to this whole family dynamic drama stuff between Quaritch and his son?
Not really. I just thought it
Yeah.
was. I just didn't. I was like, what? Like, I don't know. I guess because it's so much Navi. It's like so. Like we just kind of needed
Mm-hmm.
like this human character to be around every now and then, other than just like the humans who are like at the base, just explaining everything.
Yeah. Yeah, that's
Um.
right. The how would you say it? Like the not exposition deliverers,
hmm
basically. Yeah.
hmm
Mm-hmm.
Um. And I just thought it was cool though that like we have all these different versions of people and within this family,
Mm-hmm.
like hybrids. Now we have a human boy who's acting like a Navi. Uh, you have the reincarnation of Sigourney Weaver's character, who was like a whole different
Yeah,
thing with
space
whatever
Jesus.
energies
Yeah.
she can
Mm-hmm.
kind of tap into. Like, wasn't she like controlling the whale at one point or something like that, or like helping
I feel like she was
guide, like she's
talking to the
guiding things?
whale.
Yeah,
Yeah. Well, she like sent those fish to be lights, you know?
right.
Yeah.
Yeah, she
Um
saved her mom and her sister, I think, at one
yeah.
point.
Yeah. Uh but I guess like I just find that okay, so the base core family dynamics I think are fine. It works, right? It's like okay, it's not too complex. There's maybe more of them than needs to be for this second movie, but all right, fine. But I just think he seems to really understand. At least James Cameron in this movie seemed to really balance out for me my interests with the things that I'm less interested in. So I love the world building, right? The introduction of this city that we basically don't even see. We basically see an edge of it, right? What does that look like when we come back to this movie and it's into this planet in the next movie in whatever 2 years from now. And yeah, by the way, is that when it's set to come out? Same time 2 years from now, the next film. I think so.
I would imagine
Right?
so.
How much more advanced? Like, are they going to have like a mega city by that point? Like, what does that mean? I was imagining what like a society where the Na'vi and the humans were getting along, where you've got like I was thinking about this. It's not serious, but like imagine a scenario where you've got like Na'vi wearing like business suits. I just think that's really a funny idea. But like this concept of kind of if you're going to explore this idea of colonialism, which of course seems like that's what they're doing. There's this kind of idea of the melting pot, right? So if the humans are going to come and they're going to offer some of the Na'vi technology and things to improve, quote unquote, improve their life and absorb them into their culture, and that will be something that they'll have to fight against, as their own culture, which is to say, how do we as a species maintain our connection to the world while some of our brethren are abandoning that way of life for what seems like a kind of a quote unquote higher quality of life or something like that. So I think that's fascinating. But this Quaritch thing is really stuck in my craw, Jeremy. I don't know what you do with this character now, except I guess try to redeem him in some way. Kind of like it's like if Scar. This is the analogy that he's so evil. He kind of reminds me of Scar from Lion King, right? He's just like such an asshole that like there's no way you can redeem him. Of course, Scar dies at the end in a very similar way that kind of how he dies here, which is like falls into a pit and you never see him again. But in this case, we find out that he survived. So it's like, okay, I guess. And first of all, Spider didn't admit that he's alive, so he has to keep that a secret. At some point, he's going to come back. He's going to have to be living, I guess. There's two possibilities. He goes back to live with the humans, which is probably what he does, right? In which case, is it just more revenge? Because that's not interesting, right? There needs to be something more to it. So, I don't know. Please write in with your thoughts, comments, ideas. Tweet me at Tower Babblecast on Twitter, because I don't know what you do with Miles Quaritch. And I will just be honest. They made a big deal about this Kate Winslet character. She is a nothing character in this movie. She's like not present, basically. So I thought that was a shame. Also, maybe she'll play a bigger part in other movies. It's unclear. I think the wildest part about Avatar, Jeremy, is that it makes Sam Worthington into like one of the probably richest actors in the world. I don't know. It's so wild because he's like only okay. I don't know. Like, did you feel like he kind of like took a next step, like a level of a progression as an actor in this movie?
I don't know. I just think he nails what he's doing. I just think he's kind of like this underutilized talent that we just kind of know him from this series and like Terminator.
Right.
But I just think it's so cool that like him and Zoe like are shepherding this series as like the two main characters essentially.
I like that
Uh,
it's not like some other bigger actor, I guess, because it's nice that
yeah,
he can just be Jake and not be Sam Worthington, which is nice, I guess.
and
I don't know.
I just think they're both on their A game here. I was loving everything that they were both doing. Even with the Terry, like not being sidelined, but just in the back seat because she was a main part
Mm-hmm.
of the first one, and we have a lot more characters
Mm-hmm.
introduced here. But even when she did pop up, like we were talking about, her action sequence in the third act was just incredible. Um, just the emotion she displays over her family is really
Yeah, I agree.
really well done.
I th- I think the problem is Zoe Saldana is such a great actress that it makes Sam Worthington look less good in comparison, which I guess is not fair because the bar is set so high with Zoe Saldana. By the way, I loved her. I don't know if you've seen some of the interviews about how she's like, "Are you worried that you've been typecast or anything like this?" And she's like, "I don't care about any of that. She's like, I'm just blessed to be able to work with James Cameron and like make these amazing movies and like be a part of this amazing franchise and like the humbleness that she brings to it, I think is like really really cool. Um, but I don't know. I just like I guess Jake as a character feels so much like Sam Worthington as a person to me. So it's like they're kind of like intertwined. I don't know how I don't know how that's become that way. I don't know, but it's not the worst. It's not the worst thing. And it is kind of nice that they were able to keep Sigourney Weaver and Stephen Lang in the mix, right?
Yeah.
You know, in one case less front and center, but with Stephen Lang, they're like, no, you're the big bad again, and that's really 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 cool. So yeah, I think we've basically talked this thing to death. The only other thing I would say is that those like dragonfly sea beast things are way cooler, way cooler than the banshees, in my opinion. They make the banshees look lame in comparison, and that's funny. Okay, I guess we'll leave it there. Like I said, this movie is 3.5 hours long, so there's lots to cover. I'm sure we'll be talking about this movie again in the near future once maybe Rachel's seen it and other things. But we'll get to that. We'll be back with more ToB relatively soon. We still have to cover more of what's going on at DC. It's a shit show over there, Jeremy. People are calling for James Gunn to be fired already, which I'm sure they were already, but now it's gotten worse. It's like, oh my god, people need to take a breath. So we'll talk about some of that. There's
just
more.
Breathe.
Just breathe. Go what? Listen, if you're upset about the DC stuff, go watch Avatar. I promise it'll make you feel better.
Go touch grass.
No. I'm not. That's condescending. I'm just saying Avatar is a. What did I say? A whole ass.
If you don't want condescending sentiments, don't check James Gunn's tweets.
Yeah, that's true. Block James Gunn on
specifically
Twitter.
Specifically his last thread.
I don't know which one you're referring. Is that the one you're talking about where he talks about the fandom people that he was warned about or something like that or whatever? Is that what you're talking about?
Yeah, I don't know. He like points out the vocal minority.
Yeah,
he's like, we all know who they are. It's like, why are we talking about the vocal minority?
Well, I guess it sounds like he's getting a lot of noise sent his way, which that's difficult. I don't know. It's like all these people jumping all over him, and it's so early in the process. Literally, nothing's even been made. No announcements have really even been made yet. No official announcements. It's just him kind of like debunking stuff, and people are
he just has their slate. He's writing a movie. A lot of the actors are kind of falling like dominoes right now, which is the shocking kind of part of it, specifically with Henry Cavill, who like announced he was back, and then it's like a month later.
Here's the thing, Jeremy.
Sad. He's like, it's sad news, guys.
I did see that. I thought that was a funny way to start the whole comment he made, but I think we can just blame The Rock because if The Rock hadn't like opened his big mouth and like made all these big promises that he
wasn't gonna take no for an answer.
He had no right making those announcements, and then it all blew up in his face. And then did you see that he unfollowed the Black Adam and the
I think brothers? He tweeted that he actually never followed those accounts, so that was actually kind of just a media spin.
All right. Sure it was. But either way, it all blew up in his face. And listen, I like The Rock, but we talked about. You didn't even watch the movie. The movie's not good, and it's just a shame that despite all the work he did to try to get Henry Cavill, which we all agree he's a great Superman, but it was just like it was premature, and he just did it to pump up his own movie, and not only did it blow up in his face, it blew up in Henry Cavill's face too, and I think that's the worst part. It sucks most for Henry Cavill because it's not his fault, and it's not really fair that it happened this way, because he hadn't come back for Black Adam, this kind of like whiplash wouldn't be as bad as it is right now, and I think that's the real tragic piece, at least for me. Anyway, that's the stuff we're going to talk about in the next episode, and of course, we have our Christmas episode of the ToB Film Club coming up at the end of the month. We're going to be doing Die Hard. Debate amongst yourselves whether or not that's a Christmas movie or not. I've seen a lot of that on the social medias. People still debating that. So we'll settle that once and for all this December. So look for that in the Patreon patreon.com/TowerBabbleCast is where you find that. And but yeah, well, coming into the end of the year, which also of course means the ToBs. So start thinking about your favorite films and television shows of the year, because we're going to be talking about those as well in the month of January. Jeremy, do you have your list? Do you have your list ready in your mind, back of your mind?
Of course not.
Of course not. I know that you listen. You don't have a list ready even when you need it to have it ready. So you've got lots of time to not have that list ready. Yeah, don't worry about that. But we'll be doing our top 3 favorite film and TV shows of the year coming up in January. There's always lots of room for honorable mentions. There's lots of good shows this year. Spoilers: Avatar is going to be probably on the list of movies, and Andor is probably going to be a list of TV shows. That's all I can say for right now. Where they fall on the list, time will tell, but stay tuned for that. That'll be the ToBs. Of course, like I said before, follow us on Twitter at TowerBabbleCast, Facebook.com/TowerBabbleCast, and find everything we do at our website, towerofbabble.ca or towerofbabblepodcast.com. Both take you to the same place. That'll do it for this review of Avatar: The Way of Water. We'll be back to talk about the sequel in about 2 years, but I'm sure this is not the last time we're going to be talking about this movie, which, as I said before, is a whole ass movie. So, more ToB around the corner. We'll talk to you then.